Welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast. Episode 113 is an interview with Stephanie Case. Stephanie is a human rights lawyer, ultra-distance runner and women's rights advocate with expertise in conflict settings and humanitarian emergencies. In 2009, she gave up a career in corporate law to work for the United Nations in Afghanistan, Palestine, Malaysia, Switzerland and the United States, and for non-governmental organisations across Africa. She founded Free to Run in 2014 with the aim of ensuring that women and girls in areas of conflict were able to safely and boldly engage in outdoor adventures and develop the skills necessary to become leaders in their communities. Recently, Stephanie was awarded the Meritorious Service Medal, Civil Division, on behalf of the Governor-General of Canada's office. This award celebrates Canadians who have performed an exceptional deed or activity that brings honour to Canada. They recognise remarkable contributions in many different fields of endeavour, from advocacy initiatives and healthcare services to research and humanitarian efforts. The contributions can be innovative, set an example for others to follow, or improve the quality of life of a community. In this episode, we discuss her charity, how she trained when she was in Afghanistan and those other countries as well, how we met at Barkley and her experiences racing, particularly Tour de Géant. This was such a fun chat for me. I hope you enjoy it as much too. If you do enjoy this episode, please go on over to Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you listen on to rate, review and subscribe. It really helps grow the audience and helps me get high-profile athletes on the show. Thanks so much for your ongoing support. Are injuries or niggles ruining your enjoyment of running and hindering your performance? Get on top of these and see the specialists at Health and High Performance. Utilising the latest in technology and with a wealth of experience, the team at Health and High Performance can assist you with all your running injury and performance needs. So, to get back to enjoying your running and achieving the results you are capable of, head to healthhp.com.au/run, or you can also find them on Instagram, Health High Performance. Health and High Performance are located in Montalbert, Melbourne, but are available for telehealth appointments not only Australia-wide, but also around the world. Contact them on their website to find out more. Wild Earth Australia are the online store to help you make the most of the outdoors with top quality gear at great prices. Peak Endurance podcast listeners can use the discount code Peak Endurance, which is all capitals, to get 10% off their already awesome prices at checkout. Head on over to wildearth.com.au to get everything you need for your next adventure. Peak Endurance Coaching will help you achieve your running goals through providing customised plans that reflect your commitments in life and your athletic history. You will become fitter, faster and stronger whilst becoming part of the Peak Endurance Coaching community. Don't waste a minute of your running journey. Email me, isabel@peakendurancecoaching.com.au to get a program designed just for you. I really hope you enjoyed this fun chat with Stephanie. I know I had lots of laughs. Hi, Stephanie, and welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast.
Yeah, it's so good to see you.
I know, it's been a long time, but before we get into how we met, can you just tell the listeners a bit about yourself, your athletic background, and how you got into running and ultra running?
Sure. So I am a human rights lawyer. I work for the United Nations, and I also run a charity on the side that operates in Afghanistan and Iraq, because most of my work with the UN has been in and out of areas of conflict. And I started ultra running, now about 13 years ago. I ran my first ultra. It was a multi-day race in the Four Desert Series, or Racing the Planet in Vietnam. And I just fell in love with it. I basically ran one marathon, decided I want a bigger challenge. I signed up for an ultra marathon and that was it really. And then ever since, I've just been looking for bigger and better challenges.
Do you think there'll ever come a point where it's so big you can't, like it's too big?
I mean, that's the goal, isn't it? Like, I think for me, that's the goal. Find a challenge that actually is too big, and then you've hit your limit, and then you've got something that you can work towards. But honestly, every time I finish a race, and you always feel like you don't have any more to give when you get to the finish line, but of course you do, because it's just a mental thing. And there's a sense of accomplishment when you get to the end, but there's also that, question in the back of your head, like, well, if I finish this, like, could I have gone further?
And also it's the whole, well, I can finish this now, so what's next, I guess.
Yeah. It's a terrible spiral.
Yeah, I know. About the work that you do for the UN?
Yeah. So, I say that I'm a human rights lawyer because I think that's just the easiest way to explain it, but I'm not going into court or acting like a traditional lawyer like you would in Australia or in the United States or Canada, where I'm from. Basically, I specialize in areas of conflict. And in my last post, I was in Afghanistan in charge of protection of civilians and child protection. So basically, the teams in all of the different provinces of Afghanistan, they were documenting every incident of the armed conflict that resulted in civilian harm. So people who were killed or injured or what have you. And I would use that information. I would use the information on the trends, on specific incidents, to actually go to the parties to the conflict and get them to first acknowledge the harm that they had caused, and in some cases provide compensation, but also try to get them to change the way that they were conducting war so that civilians could be better protected. So that was a pretty interesting job. Yeah, but basically the work of international human rights is looking at the relationship between the people who have the rights, and the duty bearers, the people who are in power. So whether it be governments or armed groups that are in charge of a territory, and making sure that those rights are being respected. And when they're not, that's when grievances can build and people can resort to violence. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting career.
What was it like dealing with those kind of people, though?
Well, I think actually the start of my career in corporate law helped me because, when you're dealing with people, I used to be a mergers and acquisitions lawyer in New York. And when you can deal with a lot of the business types in that setting, you can deal with anyone, because at the end of the day, you're just talking to people.
Yes.
And yeah. And what I always fall back on is that if people are talking to you when you're from the UN or when you're from an NGO, it's because they see some kind of value in it, and there's power in that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Now, you founded your charity Free to Run in 2014. Can you tell the listeners a bit about that one?
Yeah, so I first went to Afghanistan in 2012. I was there for a year. And, I didn't go in with the intention of wanting to start my own organization. It's actually, I've got no experience in that. It's a really difficult thing. But I had, through my work and through getting to know some Afghan women at, one of the shelters that I was supporting, they were quite interested in, the running I was doing. I was raising money for this women's shelter. And they just expressed all of this interest and curiosity and desire to do what I was doing. And I had come into Afghanistan with certain assumptions that, like, running was a Western concept, or, that this wasn't something that people who are faced with war or faced with bombs and like really significant problems, like, why would they want to do something like running, which I think many of us considered, or we're realizing now, especially through COVID, is a luxury.
Yeah.
And, what I learned, it's a very obvious common sense concept, but, in a place like Afghanistan or other places that have been subjected to conflict and war, people are still living their lives. They're still growing up. They're still getting married, having children, going to school, going to work. They're still living. And, they want the same things that we would want as well. And so, Yeah, I tried really talking to other established organizations about incorporating more outdoor sports programming for women. Because in areas of conflict, women and girls are always disproportionately affected. And in places like Afghanistan, they can be really confined to the home. And in a lot of places, if they go outside, they need a male chaperone or they wear a burqa, that kind of blue tent that really covers their face. And the actual physical act of being able to go outside and be visible in public space, that's what can really change the perceptions that people have of women, of what they should be doing, not just in sports, but in work and politics and society. And yeah, everyone told me that it was too risky. And yeah, I just kept coming back to it. I felt like I had an obligation. Having worked in Afghanistan, having had the freedom to run around in my own compound, I felt like I had an obligation to at least try. And so in 2014, I was working in basically a camp for internally displaced people in South Sudan. I was living in a tent. And I was putting together the business plans for Free to Run, my charity, and I, came up with these concepts. And I just started with 1 week of hiking in the mountains in Afghanistan, and now we are across 5 provinces of Afghanistan. We're in Iraq,
Yeah,
and we've helped thousands of women and girls.
that's brilliant. I find it interesting when you said that people's lives still continue, and it's really hard, when you just see them on the news, just the horrible things, to actually realize, yeah, they still are, trying to have normal lives. And anything that we can do to enable or help them with that, I guess, is a good thing. No, and then you talk about, a male chaperone or a burqa. So how do you get around that sort of thing? Do you need to have a male with you to run with them? Because that's also part of their cultural living, isn't it? Like, are women allowed to run without a male chaperone over there?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. There's kind of this tension that we're always playing with, which is really we need community buy-in. We need
That's right.
people to understand, what we're doing, and actually to support what we're doing and what the girls and the women are doing. We need the support of their families. We need the support of the authorities. And that's really, from a development perspective, but also from a safety perspective.
Yeah.
If we didn't get that, then it would be a lot riskier. But in order to get that, we have to be pushing the boundaries, and that in itself entails some risk. So we have people in the organization who actually go out and speak to fathers, speak to families, speak to mothers, and actually explain what we're doing, the benefits of it. And sometimes they'll be in and sometimes they're not, and they'll wait to see, if friends join in, how they change, what the benefits are like for them, and then they'll be allowed to join. So it can be a process. But what's so cool is seeing not just the change of the girls and the women in the program, but how the fathers and the mothers change as well. And, they see how much more confident, how much more engaged the girls are when they go through the program, how much more helpful they are. And they learn all these skills, because it's not just about running outside. They learn conflict mediation, they learn communication skills, they learn leadership skills, they learn how to be assertive and express their views and communication. And, their families end up seeing the benefits. And so, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest success that we've had, and really our secret sauce that we have to keeping everyone safe.
Yeah. I would have thought that was, the most difficult part of it, is because I'm sure the girls themselves are keen as, but it's the getting the rest of the community on board.
Yeah.
Now, you were awarded, and I'm probably stuff up the pronunciation, the Meritorious Service Medal, on behalf of the Governor General of Canada's office. What that award celebrates Canadians who have performed an exceptional deed, or activity that brings honour to Canada, which obviously is the charity. Can you tell us a little bit about how that all happened and what that means?
Yeah, I mean, as a Canadian, I was so overwhelmed. I think it's it's not that it's a secretive process, but you're just not supposed to know. Someone not has to nominate you, and then there's a vetting process,
Yeah.
and it can go for a year, it can go for multiple years.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, 'cause they only give out a limited number per year.
Yeah.
But it's really it comes from the UK, it comes from the Queen. So, the Governor General in Canada is a representative of the Queen. And yeah, I mean, I got a phone call at the end of last year, basically telling me that I'd won this medal, and it would be announced, in the spring. And it, I'm honored to have it personally, but I feel like it should be awarded to, the Afghans and the Iraqis who are in our organization. Of course it can't be, but I really tried to share that enthusiasm with everyone else, because going through COVID has been horrendous. I mean, it's been horrendous for everyone in the world, but especially in Afghanistan and Iraq. We had to pull out staff. We weren't able to do any in-person programming. We had to switch to virtual, and but to just suddenly have some good news come out of it, that like, hey, we're on the right track. We're doing something right. I think it gave everyone else a bit of oomph.
And that's the thing. I mean, although it was awarded to you, it brings more of a focus onto the charity anyway. So that can only be a good thing, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was hoping to use it for. It's a bit, it just doesn't feel right that it comes to me, but I have to become comfortable being like a conduit of things for the charity. So in that sense, I was thrilled.
And how, like, you were bringing up about COVID with Afghanistan. How is it over there?
Right now, especially with the Indian variant, it's pretty tough. I think it's hard to know what the true situation is because of the lack of testing capabilities. We saw at the beginning of the outbreak, it was really serious. There weren't any ventilators. People were having to try to buy oxygen in the market to help, any family members that were in the hospital. But it's really hard to know what the true scale or the true impact of the disease is. We just have to take all the precautions that we can. We can't force people to get vaccinated, but we encourage it because it'll help us go back to normal more quickly.
Are you seeing many people over there getting vaccinated?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think there's a certain amount of resistance to getting vaccinated in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Oh, okay.
For various reasons. I mean, Afghanistan is one of the few places in the world that still has polio because of the difficulty with vaccinations. Yeah. And there are many reasons behind that that probably go outside of the scope of this chat. But I think what we can do as a charity is just give the information to allow people to make the best decision they can for themselves. And in the meantime, we have to take precautions. And we've got a criticality matrix to assess both security issues and health and safety issues due to COVID. And for an expedition we have coming up this summer, everyone's going to have to be tested before we go.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough for a while, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you were just saying you've got an expedition coming up this summer. So how long are you going to be over there for?
I'll be over there for a few weeks. You always have to work in some buffer time in case something goes wrong. But yeah, we'll be doing an expedition in the Wakhan Corridor, which is just one of the most remote and beautiful areas. If you think of Afghanistan like a fist with a thumb, the Wakhan Corridor is the thumb. Okay. And it's a really beautiful mountainous region with, we'll be hiking up above 4,000 meters, I think up to 43, maybe 4,600, which will be it's been my dream to do it ever since I went to Afghanistan, but I've never been able to because you have to charter planes to get out there and get a bunch of yaks and
Sounds like a
there's a
really
whole
good
logistical thing. Yeah.
Sounds awesome. I mean, if you've got to do it, then yeah, that sounds like the right way. That sounds fun. Like a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I was based in Afghanistan for 2.5 years up until this past August with the UN. And when I'm in the country with the UN, I can't get security clearance to do something like that. But when I'm in New York for the UN, I can go on vacation to Afghanistan. So
I see.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
There we go. Isn't that funny? Yeah. Now, when you have been over in Afghanistan and you've been training for ultras, but you're confined to a compound, how have you managed to make that work? Like, I get bored running around my local streets, the same streets. How do you deal with the compound?
You have to get in the right mindset. So there were a couple of things that I would do. I was in this compound where the longest stretch of road was about 500 meters. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but when I used to be based in Gaza, I didn't even have a compound I could run in. If I could get a drive to another UN compound, I would have, there wasn't even a stretch of road. I would just do loops around the parking lot. And I remember thinking like, oh, wow, I had it so good in Afghanistan when I was there in 2012. I didn't realize how good I had it by having 500 meters. So when I went back to Afghanistan in 2018, I was like, you need to remember that. Like, this is a privilege to have 500 meters. And you can always find more space. So I would run in loops. I would go behind shipping containers, find little crevices in the compound to make things more interesting. You could find little dirt piles that I would consider to be like my trail section. And, if they were doing construction, there'd be like new obstacles. And it was like, what? I thought of the compound as this like magical dynamic place where things were always changing. And if you ran at different times of day, it would look different. So yeah, in some ways, compound life is a lot easier because you've got work.
Yeah. And
then you have your running, and it's like, there's not much else to do. So it's pretty simple.
Sounds a lot like Octane, to be honest.
Yes. No, but exactly. And, in some ways, in normal life, I can get overwhelmed by all of the options that I have. And I feel guilty if I'm sitting inside and not taking advantage of all of the amazing things I can be doing. But in a compound, like, there's almost a bit of sense of peace. You're like, well, this is it. And so you just find a way to do your workouts. And if you need to do a 30K run and you can't actually get it done, then do 10K in the morning. Walk 100 meters back to your room and then come back in a few hours, do another 10K, walk back to your room, and then do it at the end of the day.
So you would do 30Ks around the compound?
Yeah, I think the most I did was 50. But, really, in order to run, 200-mile races, you'd think you'd need to run a lot more. And you do. But you can also get by on just doing everything that you can. And sometimes that has to be enough.
Yeah. And that's it. You've got to make the best of what you've got. You didn't have a treadmill?
Yeah. So there were treadmills there. Sometimes they'd get overheated, and so you'd have to like switch treadmills, but I had access to treadmills, and I really came to love running on the treadmill, which sounds crazy. But when we went into lockdown in France and we were only allowed out for in November, 1 hour a day and 1 kilometer from home, as soon as the announcement was made, I went online and bought the last treadmill I could find on the internet, and that became my privilege and my freedom to be able to run on a treadmill inside in Chamonix. It seems ridiculous, but
Chamonix is so beautiful. Yeah.
I know. And I was running in my laundry room with my face pressed up against my hot water heater. It's like,
well, the things we do to get around in, hey?
I know. But you just you just make do with what you have. And I found actually, well, I learned that the physical training is definitely important, but the mental aspect is huge.
Yeah.
You know, when I would come out of Afghanistan and I'd try to go running, I would be usually for the first couple of days, I'd be so stressed. My heart rate would be through the roof. I wouldn't be able to, you know, get 500 meters up the side of the mountain because I was just, I don't know. It was, my legs would be fine, but my mind was just,
Because of all the open space and the freedom. Is that what you
I
mean?
think I think it's, you know, when I'm in an area of conflict, you're dealing with a lot. You know, you're seeing dead bodies, you are talking with people who have lost their families, you're dealing with like really heavy issues, but you almost can't process it when you're there because you have to work and you have to get it done. And so there's this process of kind of grieving and de-stressing coming out, or I'd usually cry on the plane coming out of Kabul.
Wow.
And then it would stay with me for a couple of days. And it's stuff that you don't even realize you're carrying.
Yeah.
And I think it's true, you know, for all of us, like no matter what stresses we have, even if it's not from a war zone, you know, when we get out on the trail, sometimes stuff just comes out. And it's stuff that we've, you know, we're like, okay, I'll deal with that later. And you just like push it down. But when you're on the trail, that's when it all comes out, and it can come out in ways that really, you know, affect your pulse, your ability to move. So I've started paying a lot more attention to that. And instead of forcing myself like, okay, you know, you should be fine, you can get this 20K done, you can get this 40K done, being like, you know what? I actually can do 2K today and then go home, take a rest, and, you know, try again tomorrow.
Yeah. And I think that's part of it, is being kind to yourself and allowing yourself to feel the feelings and all of that as well.
Yeah, I think it's just figuring out when to push and when you really are redlining and you need to say, okay, this is telling me. Yeah.
So would you say you run mostly by feel?
Yeah, I do. I don't normally have a training plan. I find with my lifestyle, it's pretty hard for me to have a training plan because I don't know, you know, what country I'm going to be in or how I'm feeling. But yeah, I started working with a coach who helped me right at the beginning of my career, Ray Zahab. The last couple months, I've taken a bit of a break because I was having some knee troubles, but I'm hoping to ramp up quickly again. Because I found that during the lockdowns and during COVID, it actually helped to have someone else just tell me what to do to just differentiate the days. You know?
Yeah.
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 But normally I run completely by feel.
Yeah. So do you do speed work or any quality style sessions?
I should be doing speed work and I should be doing intervals and all of those things. And Ray will definitely make me do those. But when I'm left to my own devices, I'm pretty bad. I don't even know what I'm going to be doing the day that I go out. I will like put on a pack, or maybe not even put on a pack, and I'll just go out and run. And then, you know, 3 hours into it, I'll be so dehydrated. And I'm like, why didn't I bring a pack? Or like, why didn't I bring food? You know, you could have just planned this a little bit better. You've been doing this for over a decade. But, you know, I always come back to it that, you know, I do this for fun. And yes, there are things I could do to be better. And Ray is going to help me do those things so I can be better. But at the same time, you know, if this is going to be what I do for fun, then I want the training to be fun as well.
and that's a good point. And who knows if, you know, maybe that even helps you to run better.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, it helps. I feel lucky that I don't have the pressure. I mean, I have a relationship with the North Face, but I have no pressure to do well in races or anything, which is great. Which is really, really nice. And
do well in the races that you enter.
Yeah, you know, every time I do, it just always comes as a bit of a surprise, which I think is the best way. you know, because if you go into a race think, wanting to do well or expect to do well, then, it's not going to work.
No.
Yeah.
So, I said we were going to talk about how we met. Now, we met at Barclays, and I remember at the time, well, firstly, I was freaking out on the start line, and you were trying to talk me down. So thank you for that. But also, you told me, in the days before and after, I can't really remember, but about all the amazing races you've done, and you particularly spoke about the Tour de Gion. Do you want to just tell the listeners about some of the amazing races you've done, and in particular about the Tour?
Yeah. So the Tour, I think it will always be my favorite race, maybe until this September. But Tour de Géant is a 200-mile, 330K nonstop race in the Italian Alps. And it starts and ends in Courmayeur. And it has 24,000 meters of climb. And I think they've readjusted it now to recognize it's probably closer to 28,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah. It's a pretty different race. I think it's one of the few races where, real mountain people, like not runners, but like climbers or just mountain goats will run the race, because I think it really honors the landscape, the remoteness, mountain culture. It's quite different than any other race I've done. Is you can't sprint through something like that. I mean, you were going multiple days. You've got 150 hours to finish, so that's like 6 days. You have to figure out when you're going to sleep, how you're going to sleep, where you're going to sleep, your food. There's a whole nutrition strategy that you have to think about, and you hit every kind of weather. You hit snow, you hit heat, you have to dress for winter, you have to dress for summer, you have to deal with all of these things that don't come up in shorter races. And I love it because it's the closest race I've gotten to, even with the Barkley, that's like complete self-sufficiency. I mean, the Barkley is different because you have to navigate yourself, but many of us time out so early on that you don't get that chance to feel like you're, really against the elements, just you and the mountains. But yeah, I've done it 4 times, and I've managed to get on the podium 3 times. The first time I did it, the race ended early, unfortunately. But yeah, the second time I did it, I got second and then 2 fourths. And yeah, I've basically figured out how to run that race. I've done it twice now in almost the exact same time, 98 hours and 14 minutes, and then 98 hours and 17 minutes. So I kind of feel like I figured it out, and now I want to try something new. So there's a race that I'm doing this September. I was supposed to do it last year, of course, but COVID. So it's the upgrade on Tour de Géant. It's called Tour de Glacier.
Yep.
And it's 450K nonstop with 36,000 meters of climb. Or 32. I forget. It's in the 30s. And
it was 450K, did you say?
450K. So 287 miles. And the cool thing about this one is that you have to navigate.
Oh, seriously? And so I navigate, is it that you can, it's like the Dragon's Back where you have to choose the best course, or you actually...
No. So it's not, I don't want to say it's not that bad. maybe the next stage. It's not like the Barkley, you can have GPS, but on a lot of places, I went and tested out part of the course last summer. In a lot of places, there is no path. I mean, you are on glaciers, you're going over, giant rocks and crevices. And so in that sense, you do have to find your own way in some places, but you can't, like, it's not like foul running where you can just...
Okay, I wasn't sure.
But, going for days and days with little sleep, it's like you're drunk. And it might be easy to follow a GPS path, when you're fully coherent, but to be able to do it in the night when you haven't slept in days, I don't know, it's going to be a real
Wow. Sounds like fun.
Yeah. I'm honestly on April Fool's Day, I knew it was an April Fool's joke, but they have the Tour 330 and then the Tour 450. And on April Fool's Day, they put up like Tour 1000. And I was like, I know this is a joke, but I really want to do this race. Please make this race.
Oh no, only you would say that. Oh, that's funny. So it is put on by the people who put on Tour de Gion. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is it run at the same time?
Yeah. So we'll start on the Friday night and tour will start on the Sunday. So hopefully everyone kind of finishes around the same time. Yeah. But there's only 4 women doing the race.
Oh wow. So you guarantee a podium spot.
Yeah. But I find it a bit I find it a bit sad because
I agree.
In order to qualify to enter the lottery for Glacier, you have to have done tour in under 130 hours, which already limits the pool. I mean, there's only like 8% of the pool of Tour de Géant is women. And so then you get the number that have done under 130 hours, and then the percentage of those people that want to run 450. And it's you get 4 people.
Not a lot of women want to do it. It's that not a lot of women who want to do it are able to do it.
Exactly. Because of all of the societal reasons why it's tough to do the sport. And
so we need to encourage more women to try the Tour de Géant. So, to do
and we also need race directors to have more sensitivity to this. And some are, I've been having conversations with various boards of directors on other races and also with the North Face. But you're starting to see some initiatives now where they're starting to think about, okay, how can we arrange childcare during races so that if mothers want to do this, because childcare responsibilities are still falling primarily to women.
That annoys me too. Why is that only an issue for women?
I know.
Parents too.
But it still is. And, we saw this during COVID. We saw this during the lockdowns. Women way more commonly than men were leaving their jobs so that they could take care of the kids and do homeschooling. And then their careers are screwed. And, do you think they have time to be able to go out and run trail races? No. And it's also this feeling, a lot of people say like the ultra running community is so inclusive and, so welcoming. And I do agree with that. But you look at the ultra running community, it's primarily white and it's primarily male still. And, there's multiple reasons for that. And I think we need to be having more conversations about that.
No, that sounds really good. I was actually in a meeting with our Australian Ultra Running Association last night, and we were discussing how to start getting more women in, and we want to really start working on that. So, I think just every little bit that everyone can do is really important.
Yeah, we should talk about that afterwards.
Yes, definitely. I would love to. No, also when I tell people, because I always, say, oh, Tour de Géant, I want to do this, is because Stephanie told me how awesome it is and how your muscles were breaking down and your stomach was olive oil. Tell us about that one so people know that I wasn't just making it up. It really
Oh God, I so many weird things have happened to me in this race. Like I can't even believe that I'm doing it again and more. But yeah, I think it was in the second year I did it. So the year when I did my best, second female and 14th overall out of a field of like, I think 800.
That's awesome.
But yeah, for a period of, it seemed like ages. It was at least 12 hours. I couldn't take down any solid food. I'd come into a checkpoint. I just like thrown up everywhere. And then I was like, oh God, I didn't want the medical team to put a hold on me. And so I had to pretend that I was fine. I was like, oh, I'm fine. And I just ran out and off into the night. As you do. This is not, don't do this at home.
We're not
but, I have the ability, I've got a booty, I've got thighs, I carry fat with me. So I know I can survive. Like I'm not running super lean, but yeah, it had been, I think about 12 hours where I just hadn't been able to eat anything. I couldn't couldn't chew. And yeah, when you get into that state of ketosis or whatever, you can smell, it's like this rotting, it's a very distinctive, like rotting fruit smell. And that's the smell.
What does that smell like? And I'm like, I don't know.
It's like rotting fruit. I mean, the clothes that I wore, I had to throw out. Like you just,
really?
Yeah. Like no amount of washing gets that out.
Wow.
And so I just had to think creatively. And, I think that that's why I do well in these races. It's because I tend to be haphazard. I don't have a set plan. And so that means that I can just adapt. Yeah. And so I said, okay, if I can't chew, I just have to get calories in by anything that I can swallow. So I called my mom and I was like, okay, at the next checkpoint, I just need like anything I can swallow without chewing. I was like mashed potatoes, ice cream, whipped cream, like just go to the gas station and just like anything I can swallow. And she was like, okay. And I came up to a checkpoint. And it was like not a real checkpoint. It was in the middle of the mountains. I think this was after the second night. Yeah. So I was going on the third day, I think. And they'd helicoptered in a couple of medics who were there with like some bread, some olive oil, and some dry biscuits. Fine. Yeah. And I came up and I looked at the olive oil and I was like, we need to try this. And so I just poured this little Dixie cup of olive oil and the doctors were looking at me and they're just speaking Italian. And they're like, no. And I drank it and I was like, like rubbing my belly, and then I poured another one and just ran off like burping olive oil.
Was it foul? Was it hard?
I mean, it was like disgust. Like, it was just drinking. But that's like a couple thousand calories. Like
calories. Yeah.
It's a lot of calories. And if it doesn't give you diarrhea, then it was good. And it stayed down, and it was what I needed to kind of get rid of the muscle rotting.
Good.
And then I came down. Yeah. And then I was able to eat the ice cream. And then I took the whipped cream with me, like the aerosol can. I took it with me up the mountain. And now still when I go into races, people are like, oh, where's the whipped cream?
Oh my God.
Yeah. You just do what you can to get through. I mean,
and I think that's you're telling us about that is a really good lesson in what we need in ultra running is to be adaptable and to just, go with whatever it is that works, because you can have the best plans in the universe, but that doesn't matter when they all go to crap.
I mean, I've done the dumbest shit. Sorry to swear, but I've done the dumbest shit in ultras, but it was just what I needed to do at the time. Like the number of times that I have cut the shorts out of my skorts because I've been chafing. And I'm like, I've been chafing so badly, and I'm like, I don't know how to get rid of this. And I'm like, well, just cut out the shorts, and no one will be able to see as long as there's no wind. And so like I would just run naked for like nothing. No, nothing.
Oh my God.
It's like what's the worst consequence of that?
Yeah, so people see your butt, and
someone sees your bits. Like it's like what's the big deal? So I finished races multiple times, pretty much naked. Western States. I finished Western States. I was quite worried actually, because I cut the shorts out and it was like quite a short skirt. And when you're running at the end, you're running onto the track, and there are some photographers like kneeling down. And I looked at the photos after and I'm like, is that a shadow, or is that a what is that exactly?
Yeah, you didn't post those ones on Insta?
It's all fine. It's all fine. But yeah, I think you have to get to that point. Otherwise, the other option is dropping out. Yeah. And I'd rather show my vagina than drop out.
Yeah, and you know what? Who cares? At the end of the day, like you said, so what?
Yeah.
Yeah, good on you. I love that. That's excellent. That's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, the number of like skirts that I have in my wardrobe, in my running kit with no shorts. They're just like
when you're in the middle of the race, how did you cut them out?
Yeah, so you just, when you come up to a checkpoint, if there's a medic, they will always have scissors in their kit.
Yeah.
Or in a refuge, they'll have scissors. They will look at you very strangely. But yeah, once I had swollen up, it was my third year doing Tour de Géant, and I'd messed up my electrolytes. Something had happened, and I gained like probably 20 pounds of just water weight. Like I was so big. I was so uncomfortably big. And like in my face and in my like stomach and my thighs, like everything was just big. And I was wearing waterproof pants, and they couldn't contain my thighs anymore. And so I came up to one of the medical crew, and I just got a pair of scissors, and I cut my pants into a skirt.
Ah, nice.
I wasn't wearing anything under that either, so that I could just run freely. And when I finished, it looked like I'd been attacked by a bear, because, I had like, it wasn't cut, and it was like jagged strings hanging down.
I mean, maybe this is getting too, I don't know, you didn't find your thighs rubbed together?
Oh yeah. I was kind of waddling, yeah. And I've got a really good like anti-chafing cream that basically another tour runner gave me, and ever since then I haven't used anything else. Yeah, Chafex. If you need, I had it in Barkley.
Chafex.
Chafex, yeah. It's a really small company. Yeah, I think they've been hit pretty hard by COVID, but I'm not sponsored by anything by them. But I will. I mean, I have so many tubes. I basically bought so many tubes of this that they contacted my mom, because it was all getting sent to Canada. And they were like, oh, just interested, that you're ordering such a large volume. Are you ordering for a sports team?
A sports team is one. Yeah.
Just my daughter and her very chafable skin.
Oh no. Well, and like you said, you're not sponsored, but it's good to share products that actually really work.
Yeah, I did have a relationship with them for a year or two, but I mean, it was just, and that ended a few years ago. I would just promote the shit out of them no matter what. Like, I love this product so much.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll put them in the show notes, but I'll also look them up just for myself.
Yeah. So good.
I mean, chafing is one of those things that can make you drop.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it was my biggest concern going into any race that was longer than 100K. I just, I have got very sensitive skin, and it's one of those things that shouldn't stop you, but it can, because it's so painful. Oh my God. Painful. Yeah. No, this was the only thing that's really saved me. I got welts like in my butt crack from my first year at Tour. And it was another runner who had come from the adventure racing background, and he gave me a tube of his Chafex, and I was like, I'm not living without this now. Yeah.
The adventure races have all that sort of stuff now, don't they? Because they're
exactly
so long. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, are you planning on going back to the Barkley?
It's a good question. So the first year I did it, the year that we met, it was right. What did we meet in my second year or my first year?
No, it was your second year, because you wanted to go further. So I went
right
in 2019, I think.
You're right.
Yeah.
So yeah, my first year I was going in right before I was going to Afghanistan. And then the second year when we met, it was after I'd already spent a year in Afghanistan on shitty training.
Yeah.
And I just, I felt I didn't apply the year after, because I felt it's so, like, when you are taking a spot at the Barkley, because there's so few places, like, you have to be at the top of your game. And I just knew I'd already tried to do it on Afghanistan training, and I knew I wouldn't be able to give it my all. I mean, I could have made it work, of course, if that was my primary focus, but the way that work was and my stress levels, I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this race justice if I go back, and it's not fair to take a spot just because I want to do it.
Yeah, you can do the fitness work, but it's very hard to do the nav work when you're there in Afghanistan.
Do you know my navigation, surprisingly, because I hadn't really done any, my navigation was spot on the second time I did it. And I like I navigated the whole way. I had, so I actually felt really good about my navigation, but my fitness wasn't there where I wanted it to be so that I could be faster. I think, you tend to, because it's not mountains, and, because I had a place in Chamonix and, I raced in the Alps, I was like, oh, well, it's just hills, but no, it's steep. Like, it's pretty steep.
Surprisingly, yes.
Yeah. And, maybe one day I will go back. I think you always want to go back and do better, but, I'd have to be a lot stronger than I am now.
But in saying that, you're strong enough to do 450 Ks with 36,000 meters elevation.
Yeah, or 32, I forget. But
I'll say 36.
I'm sure I'll find some extra. That's more of an exercise in just pure stubbornness and persistence. Like you just have to have I believe, let's see, but I believe you just have to have a really solid base of training. You don't have to be fast. You don't have to be super strong. You just have to be solid. You have to be able to problem solve and deal with blisters, chafing, all of the little things that come with running day after day after day that could really break you. So that's what I'm hoping, but we'll see.
How do you deal with this sleep deprivation in something that long?
In Tour, I really redlined it. So out of 98 hours, I would sleep like maybe 2.5 in total, which is really too little, I think. It's too little because you get very delirious, and
you would have,
you really lose it, and your emotions all over the place, and you kind of fall asleep when you're on the death march going up. And from a safety perspective, Tour de Glacier is harder. There's roped bits, there's really, I think, dangerous bits in my view. And so I'm gonna have to sleep a lot more to have my wits about me. But yeah, I usually try to sleep at the top of a climb rather than in the valley, because your brain falls asleep when you're going up, and it's easier to just get in bed and fall asleep right away. But if when you're descending, your brain is active, you're looking where your feet is going. And then if you get to a life base or checkpoint and you want to try to go to sleep, it'll take 20 minutes to kind of calm your body and your mind down. And that's 20 minutes that you're wasting. And then the more you think about the time that you're wasting, the harder it is to fall asleep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that'll be really interesting. I would love it if we could do another interview after that race just to find out what it was like.
Yeah. I have no idea what's going to happen.
But that's part of the appeal, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to try to, usually when I do Tour, I try to give some updates from the trail, which are always hilarious to look back on. There was one time when I was singing in the middle of the night. I think it was the third night, just to try to keep myself awake. And I ended up putting it on Facebook. I think this is before I was on Instagram. And it was a couple of years later, maybe, or a year later, I was invited onto like the national radio station, like the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, in Canada. And they didn't tell me, but I thought I was going in for this serious interview, and they used my singing as the intro to my interview. And I was sitting there in the studio, just like, I cannot sing. So I now have the pleasure of saying that my voice has been aired singing on national radio. So you never know what's going to happen to this stuff.
And that's what they say, whatever you post is always out there, isn't it? So
I need to think about this more carefully.
Yeah. But you know what, once again, that would have been, that's funny, and that's good. And that's good that they put it on.
Yeah. I'm a bit of an open book. I mean, obviously I have to be careful with my job at the UN, but I'm an open book. I mean, I think it's helpful for people to know that, that everyone struggles in ultras. I think we watch people who do well in races, and you might not get to see all the behind the scenes stuff. And I'm very open with all of my behind the scenes stuff, how much I hate it during the race sometimes, how much I want to drop out, how hard it is. I cry, I throw up. I mean, it's a whole thing. Yeah. But, people need to know that, because otherwise, if they think that the people who are finishing and the people who are doing well are just breezing through, then, no one's going to want to do this.
No, that's right. And you're right, because also, like you say, when you go into checkpoints, you've got to put on a bit of a happy face so that, they're going to let you go through. And if that's what people see, they don't see the suffering out there. So,
And there's a lot of suffering.
Oh, yeah. And there is, and it doesn't matter what level you're running at, there is going to be suffering.
Yeah.
It's just part of it. So, how do you recover? Or, I mean, not that you know yet, but how do you recover from something that long?
Yeah, I've had different experiences with recovering from tour. One year, the year I did my best, I recovered so quickly. I actually raced a month later.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know what it was. I think some of the key things I can identify that helped was that after a day of just kind of letting my body, you balloon up because of all the inflammation of running for that long. But I just started trying to move as soon as I could. And so I think 2 days after I finished, I just put on my shoes and went for a hike up the end of the course to watch people finish. And the inflammation went down so quickly just from moving. You don't have to run, but I think active recovery is really important. And then, I didn't push myself to run until I felt like it. And that depends on how you feel. But I think it's important to just get out, move. Don't put any expectations on how far you're going to go, how long you're going to go, whether you're going to run or not. If you feel like running, just jog for a bit. And if not, then just go for a walk. And that helps kind of get your body back in shape, I think.
Yeah. And so do you have any race plans for next year?
Oh gosh, I haven't even thought about next year, because I haven't raced at all during the pandemic. It was a personal decision that I didn't want to race until I was fully vaccinated. And so my last race that I did was Ronda del Sims, which now has been canceled permanently. And that was, it was July 2019. They had the race directors. It's quite sad. That race had been on for 10 years, but the race directors got such bad backlash when they canceled the race. And I think they offered a 70% refund, that they ended up having to even go to the police to make complaints about some of the threats they were getting. So they ended the race, which is so sad. Because that was just a brilliant, really tough race in the Pyrenees. But that was July 2019, and I haven't raced since then. So it'll be 2 years. I honestly haven't thought about next year, because I need to remember what it's like to race again. I need to remember, that feeling of like excitement and panic on the start line. That feeling of like, oh God, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. And then you get through it. I need to go through all of that and then
figure it out. Yeah.
And then just see.
Yeah. And who knows what next year will bring anyway. So it's hard to make definitive plans, isn't it?
And I never know where I'm going to be living or what I'm going to be doing. So it's that always makes things a bit tough. I could still be in New York, or I could be in Zambia, or I could be in Yemen,
Yeah. No, well, wow. Well, like I said, I'd love to catch up with you again after that race in September. So I hope you do that. And thank you so much for joining me today. How can people follow you on social media if they want to see what you do, listen to you?
Yeah, exactly. I think Instagram is the best way. I've got to change my Instagram name, because it's there from when I was like 22, but it's the Ultra Runner Girl. I'll be the oldest Ultra Runner girl.
That's all right.
And then for my charity, for Free to Run, it's Free to Run NGO, non-governmental organization. So both of those, it'd be great.
All right, well, I'll put them in the show notes. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much.
Bye.